We continue now at the top of Daf Dalet Amud Beis in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 4b. The Gemara is in the middle of discussing the machlokas between Rabba and Rava in terms of why the Shliach says b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam. Again, Rabba says the reason is because lefi she'ein b'kiyin l'shma, because in Medinas Hayam they're not experts in the halacha that the get has to be written l'shma. And according to Rava, the reason is that there's no Eidim Mitsuyin L'kaimo. You don't have Eidim around who are able to certify the get because there's no travel between Eretz Yisrael and Medinas Hayam. And so that's why the Shliach says, B'fanei nechtav or B'fanei nechtam. And so the Gemara quotes our Mishnah. The Mishnah seems to have a machlokus in terms of molech, in terms of the case where a Shliach delivers from Eretz Yisrael to Medinas Hayam. The Tanna Kama in the Mishnah says when a Shliach delivers from Eretz Yisrael to Medinas Hayam, there's no need to say B'fanei nechtav, B'fanei nechtam. And the Chachamim say there is a need. And so the Gemara says, isn't it the same machlokus between Rab and Rava? V'hani Gemiri, the one that says there's no need, it's because they are learned in Eretz Yisrael. As Rashi says, V'hani Gemiri, the Eretz Yisrael, in Eretz Yisrael they're learned. Umar Savar, and the other one holds, L'fi she'ein Eidim Mitsuyin L'kaimo, that the reason for saying B'fanei nechtam, B'fanei nechtam is because you don't have Eidim around to certify the get, so it doesn't matter which direction the Shliach is going, whether he's going from Medinas Hayam to Eretz Yisrael, or even if he's going from Eretz Yisrael to Medinas Hayam, it's the same issue, and the Shliach will have to say, B'fanei nechtam, B'fanei nechtam, V'hani nami lo shchichi, because in this direction also, it's not common to have travelers. And so the Gemara answers, Rabba metaretz l'taimei v'Rava metaretz l'taimei. Rabba can answer the Mishnah according to his opinion, and Rava can answer according to his opinion. In other words, both Rabba and Rava can say that all Tanoim in the Mishnah agree with them. Rabba metaretz l'taimei. Rabba metaretz l'taimei. Rabba answers according to his reasoning. Everybody in the Mishnah holds the real reason for b'fanei nechtam is because of lishma. And here, the machlokas in the Mishnah is whether we make a gezerah when you take from Eretz Yisrael to Medinas Hayam. So since you're already saying b'fanei nechtam when you go from Medinas Hayam to Eretz Yisrael, so we make a gezerah the other direction as well. The Tanna Kama savar logas. Rinan the Tanna Kama says there's no need to make such a gezerah molech atu mevi. You don't need to make a gezerah molech because of mevi. But Rabbanan Basrei Savri Gazrinan Molech Atu Mevi. And the Rabbanan, the Chacham in the Mishnah, the later Rabbanan in the Mishnah, they say we do make a Gezer of Molech Atu Mevi, and therefore it's necessary to say B'fanei nechtam in both directions. The Rava metaretz l'taimei, and the Gemara says Rava also can answer according to his opinion. Everybody agrees that the reason is because you don't have Eidim around in order to certify the get. V'Rabbanan basroi l'furushay taimei the Tanna Kama hu daso. And the Rabbanan are actually not arguing on the Tanna Kama. The Rabbanan are coming along to explain the reasoning of the Tanna Kama and to say that you have to say b'fanei nechtam in both directions. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Hamevi get mi Medina l'Medina b'Medinas Hayam, tzarech lomar b'fanei nechtam. If a person delivers a get from one Medina to another Medina in Medinas Hayam, there is a requirement to say b'fanei nechtam. So habaos Medina b'Medinas Hayam. It sounds like the Mishnah is saying that if you'd be in the same Medina in Medinas Hayam, lo tzarech, there's no need. So l'Rava nicha, according to Rava, that makes sense because there's no issue of travel within the same Medina. But l'Rabba kasha, but according to Rava, it's difficult because who cares that you're in the same Medina? Shouldn't there still be an issue of lishma? And the Gemara answers, Lo teima haba'osa Medina b'Medinas Hayam lo tzarech. No, don't make that inference. Don't say that in the same Medina within Medinas Hayam you don't need to say. Actually, you wouldn't need to say b'fanei nechtam because they're not learned. Ela ema, rather what you should say is the following inference. Medina l'Medina be'Eretz Yisrael lo tzarech. That from one Medina to another Medina in Eretz Yisrael it's not needed because again over there, according to Rabba in Eretz Yisrael, they're learned, so there is no issue. But the Gemara says, Ha behedya katanila. But isn't that already explicit in the Mishnah? Because it says, Hamevi get be'Eretz Yisrael, Eino tzarech lamar b'fanei nechtam. It says if a person delivers a get in Eretz Yisrael, there is no need to say b'fanei nechtav or b'fanei nechtam. And so therefore, if that's already in the Mishnah, that can't be that can't be the inference that we're supposed to draw from the other phrase in the Mishnah. But the Gemara says not necessarily. If I only had hani mili di'evid, if I only had that line in the Mishnah, I would say that di'evid after the fact, if you didn't say b'fanei nechtam, so it would still be okay. But l'chatchila you shouldn't do that, and that's why we need the inference. Kamash Malan, we're saying no, that even l'chatchila, there's no requirement within Eretz Yisrael. And Rashi says, if we only had the inference from the Reisha, I would say that's only after the fact. Meaning, let's say he's bringing it from one Medina to another Medina in Eretz Yisrael, and it wasn't written in front of him, so he can't say b'fanai. So b'di'evet, it wasn't written in front of him. You don't say that the shlichus is bad because of that. But if he would lechatchila ask us, we would say you should be there. You should be there. You should be present when it's written in sign. So you can say befanai kamash malon mishnah yaseir desefer delot tzarich, and that's why it's repeating it again at the end of the Mishnah and saying it's not necessary at all within Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, V'iko de mosiv lohachi. There are those who ask the question in the following manner. They have a slightly different version of the above question. That the inference that the Gemara wants to initially make is as follows. Hami Medina l'Medina be'Eretz Yisrael lo tzarich. That again, Medina l'Medina b'Medinas hayam. So in that situation, so then you're required, but Medina to Medina in Eretz Yisrael, there is no requirement. Why would that be good? Or why would that be the case? L'Rabba nichel l'Rava kash. According to Rabba, that makes sense. Because you're in Eretz Yisrael, there's no issue of lishma. But according to Rav, it's difficult because you should still have an issue of traveling. And so the Gemara says, Rava will answer, Lo teima mi Medina le Medina be'Eretz Yisrael lo tzarich. Don't draw the inference that from Medina to Medina in Eretz Yisrael you don't need. Ela ema haba'osa Medina Medina Hayam lo tzarich. Really, what the inference should be is that in that same Medina and Medina Hayam there's no need, because again, according to Rava rather, the issue is only an issue of traveling. Avol mi Medina le Medina be'Eretz Yisrael might tzarich. But the Gemara says if you're going to learn it that way, so from Medina to Medina in Eretz Yisrael, what would be the halacha? Apparently, it would be required to say b'fanei nechta. But if that's the case, listen, hamevi mi Medina le Medina stam. So if that's the case, what are you talking about Medina to Medina and Medina Sayam? Anytime you're going from Medina to Medina, anytime you're going from one province to another, wherever you are, whether it's in Medina Sayam, whether it's in Eretz Yisrael, there's going to be a requirement to say b'fanei nechtam because of the lack of travel between the two places. And the Gemara says, you're right, liolam mi Medina le Medina be'Eretz Yisrael nami lo tzarich. Really, from Medina to Medina and Eretz Yisrael, it's also not needed. In other words, it happens to be that according to Rava, who says the issue is an issue of travel, but that's not an issue from Medina to Medina in Eretz Yisrael. Even though you might think there's an issue of travel, there is no issue of travel. There's no issue of certification. Why? Because in Eretz Yisrael there are people who have aliyah l'regel. They go up for the holidays to Eretz Yisrael. There's a lot of travel into Eretz Yisrael. So mishkach shchichi. Travel is very frequent, and it's easy to find edim to certify a get. And the Gemara says, Teinach bisman shebeis hamikdash kayim. That's a good answer during the times when there was a beis hamikdash. Bisman shein beis hamikdash kayim ma'ikol l'meimer. But what are you going to say during the times where there's no beis hamikdash? In a time where there's no beis hamikdash, so then you don't have that travel of the olei regalim. And the Gemara says, Kevan de'ika batei dinin dikvi. Since in Eretz Yisrael you have established courts, mishkach shchichi. So again, travel is frequent, and that's why within Eretz Yisrael it doesn't matter where you're going in Eretz Yisrael, whether it's in the same Medina, whether it's in different Medinas. According to Rava, who says the issue is certification, there is no issue because there's no issue of travel within Eretz Yisrael, even when there's no Beis Hamikdash. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Omer afilo me hagmonia la hagmonia. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, even from hagmonia to hagmonia, which the Gemara now explains, V'yomer Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak says, Irachas haisa be'Eretz Yisrael, there was one city in Eretz Yisrael, V'asosius Shema, its name was Asosius, V'hayu ba beis hagmonios, and there were two governors of that city, Shayu Makbid and Zalzan, they were strict with one another. In other words, the point is there was no travel between one section of the city and the other section of the city. And therefore, it's necessary to say from Hagmonia to Hagmonia because of the lack of travel. And this was in Eretz Yisrael. And you see over here, it's a lack of travel. And so according to Rava, that's good because there was no travel between the two places. And the reason is certification. That's why it's required to say But according to Rabba, it's difficult because you're in Eretz Yisrael over here. They are Bekin Lishma, so what's the issue? And so the Gemara says, Rabba Islay de Rava. Rabba actually agrees with Rava. And Rashi explains, Rabba Islay de Rava, the Medina Medina Beretz Yisrael, Hechat de Kapti Velo Shchichi, Eidim Tzarech L'Meimar. In other words, if you're Medina and Medina to Eretz Yisrael, even though there's no issue of Lishma, but if you have a situation where there's an issue of travel, and you don't have Eidim to be Mekayim it, even Rabba agrees that's a reason to say B'fanei Nechtam. In other words, Rabba says there's an additional reason of Lishma, but he agrees with the reason of Eidim Mitzuyin L'Kayim. Aval Rava Lesley de Rabba, but Rava does not agree with Rabba. The Shchichi Eidim Lo Chashin L'Ein Bekiyan Dekula Bekiyan. Because according to Rava, if you have Eidim around, then there's no concern whatsoever. We're not concerned with the fact that people don't know about Lishma, because according to Rava, everybody knows about Lishma. And so the Gemara revises what it said earlier on Daf Beis Amid Beis, Elamai Beinayu. So rather, what's the difference then between Rava and Rava? Ika Beinayu, so the difference between them will only be two of the cases. The Asiyah Beitrei, number one, let's say two people deliver the get. So in that case, again, if two people deliver the get, you still have an issue of Lishma potentially potentially, but you have no issue of kiyum. And so Rabba, who says there's an additional issue of lishma, would require to say b'fanei nechtav or b'fanei nechtam. Inami or ba'osa medina b'medina sayam. Let's say a get is delivered within the same province in Medina Hayam. So in that situation, there you're talking about a case where there is an issue of lishma, but there's no issue of travel. And again, Rabba would require b'fanei nechtam, and Rava would not require b'fanei nechtam. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Hamevi get mi Medina Hayam. It says, if somebody delivers a get from Medina Hayam, ve'eno yochel lomer b'fanei nechtam, and he's not able to say b'fanei nechtam, which the Gemara will explain what that means. And yesh all of Edom, if there are witnesses signed on the get, yeskayim b'chosmav. So what you can do is, you can certify it. Rashi says, yeskayim b'chosmav, yavo hamakirim hachasiva v'kosher. Those who recognize the signature can come, and then it will be kosher. V'havinon bon, we ask on this Mishnah as follows. Mai ve'eno yochel lomer. What does it mean that he's not able to say b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtam? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Hey Amud Aleph.